The city bustled with the clamor of merchants shouting prices, the clatter of horse hooves, and the shimmer of silks swaying in the marketplace. But within one narrow shop, tucked between a goldsmith and a spice seller, stood a family on the edge of ruin. The merchant's once prosperous trade had crumbled. A ship lost at sea, debts piling higher than the shelves of dusty goods, and creditors who circled like wolves. Every day, his daughter, Alara, watched her father's shoulders stoop lower, his hands tremble as he signed away another portion of their livelihood. Alara was no ordinary daughter of commerce. Her beauty was whispered about, but it was her wit, her sharpness of tongue, that drew admiration and envy. And among those who coveted her was Prince Dorian. Golden-haired, smiling like a savior, he came not with compassion but with conditions. Marry me, and your family will be saved. Her father, desperate, begged her to accept, but Alara had seen the prince's charm peel away in private, his cruelty when denied, his hunger for control. She would not chain herself to a gilded cage. Then one storm-tossed evening, fate knocked, quite literally, at their door. A carriage unlike any other rolled into the square, its wheels silent, its lanterns glowing with a cold blue light. The horses were shadows, their eyes like embers. From within stepped a figure cloaked in darkness, a shape more beast than man. His voice rumbled like thunder. "You owe a debt. I offer mercy. One life for another, the girl will come with me." The town scattered in terror, whispering of curses and monsters. But the merchant, shaking, knew this was the end. His debts were beyond human forgiveness. Alara stood her ground. Fear burned in her chest, but deeper still was something sharper, defiance. She stepped forward, chin lifted, voice steady. "If I go with you, you spare my family. That is the bargain." The beast's glowing eyes narrowed. Then with a slow nod, he agreed. Her father wept, her sisters clung to her hands, but Alara only looked at the prince who stood smugly in the crowd, certain this would break her spirit. She smirked at him, just enough for him to see. Better a beast of the woods than a viper in a crown. The carriage door creaked open, and Alara climbed inside. The moment she sat, the horses surged forward, carrying her away from the life she knew. Through the narrow window, she saw the city fade, the noise, the lights, the prince's gloating face. And ahead, through winding roads of twisted trees and silver moonlight, the carriage carried her into a destiny no one could have imagined. Not a prisoner, not a victim, but a bride-to-be of the beast. The road seemed endless. No cobblestones, no familiar lanterns, only forests older than memory, their branches clawing at the night sky. The hooves of the shadow horses made no sound, yet their speed was unnerving. Alara gripped the seat, steadying herself, every jolt reminding her that she was leaving behind everything she knew. Hours or perhaps minutes, time melted in that unnatural carriage. Finally, they broke through the trees. There, upon a cliff that seemed to pierce the clouds, rose a castle unlike any she had ever imagined. Its towers spiraled impossibly high, their edges jagged as if grown from the rock itself. Strange blue flames burned in iron braziers along the walls, casting long shadows that seemed to move of their own will. The carriage stopped before massive gates of blackened iron. They groaned open without a touch. The beast stepped down first. In the moonlight, his form was clearer, taller than any man, broad as a fortress door, with fur like storm clouds and eyes that glowed amber beneath a wolfish brow. His voice rumbled low. "You will not be harmed here, unless you choose to be." Cryptic words, a warning, a promise, Alara couldn't tell. Inside, the castle breathed. Candles lit themselves as she passed. Hallways stretched farther than sight. Murals of long-forgotten kings lined the walls, though their painted eyes looked almost sorrowful. Alara caught whispers in the air, voices that vanished when she tried to listen. At last, they reached a grand dining hall. A feast lay waiting, platters of roasted meats, golden fruits, goblets filled with sparkling wine. Yet the long table had only 2 chairs. The beast gestured. "Eat, you are far from home." Alara sat, but her eyes never left him. His claws could tear through steel, yet he did not touch the food. He only watched, his expression unreadable. Finally, she asked, "Why me? You could have demanded gold, land, even loyalty. Why take me?" The beast's amber eyes softened, just for a moment. His voice carried a strange sadness. "Because you are the only one who dared look at me without trembling." The words struck her silent. No prince had ever spoken to her so honestly. No man had ever sounded so lonely. After the meal, a servant with no face, only shadow in the shape of a man, guided her to chambers fit for royalty. Velvet curtains, a bed carved from ebony, a balcony overlooking the moonlit forest. It was beautiful, but the beauty was heavy, like a crown too large for its bearer. As she lay awake, staring at the ceiling painted with constellations, Alara thought of her father, her sisters, and of Prince Dorian, who surely believed she was trapped in misery. But there was something Dorian didn't understand. Alara had not surrendered. She had entered the beast's castle not as a prisoner, but as a player in a game she had yet to fully see. And for the first time since the bargain, she felt not fear, but curiosity. For beyond the shadows of this cursed place lay secrets. Secrets of a beast who was more than he seemed. Days passed in the castle, though time itself seemed strange there. Mornings bled into evenings without warning, and the moon sometimes lingered far too long. Alara wandered its halls. She found libraries that stretched upward into shadow, their ladders climbing to books whose titles changed when she blinked. She found mirrors that refused to show her reflection, and in the grand ballroom, she saw chandeliers swaying though no wind stirred. One evening, the faceless servant led her through a heavy oak door, and what lay beyond made her heart ache. A sprawling courtyard, alive with flowers that glowed faintly in the dusk. Roses of silver, lilies that hummed softly, vines that pulsed with a light like captured stars. It was beautiful, yet strange. At the center stood a fountain, its waters black as obsidian, reflecting the sky like a mirror. And beside it, the beast. He stood as if waiting for her. His massive claws gently cradled a single white rose, but the petals were wilting, darkening at the edges. "This garden," he said quietly, "is my truth. Every flower here is a fragment of who I was, what I lost, what was stolen." Alara stepped closer, her voice steady but curious. "Stolen by whom?" The beast's gaze flickered, his jaw tightened. He looked away as though the answer itself was a wound too deep. Instead, he asked her, "Tell me, merchant's daughter, what do you see when you look at me?" She studied him. The jagged horns, the massive frame, the claws that could end her life in a breath. But behind those amber eyes, she saw something else. "I see a man who has forgotten what it feels like to be loved." The beast turned away quickly, but she thought, just for an instant, that she saw his shoulders tremble. That night, Alara dreamed. In her sleep, the enchanted rose whispered secrets. She saw visions. A handsome young man in royal garb, pride in his eyes, cruelty in his smile. And then she saw him raise a blade, carving symbols of fire across the beast's chest. Alara woke with a gasp, clutching her sheets. Her heart pounded. The truth burned in her mind. The curse was no accident, no punishment from the gods. It was born of jealousy, Dorian's jealousy. Her beloved Prince was not her savior. He was the very monster who created the beast. And as she stood on the balcony, the castle stretching beneath her, a new resolve lit in her chest. She was no pawn in Dorian's game. She was here to protect the beast, and perhaps, in saving him, she might discover the true meaning of love. The sun set in a blaze of crimson that evening, its light spilling through the high windows of the castle like blood on glass. Alara had spent her day in uneasy silence, the dream of the beast's curse gnawing at her heart. But peace was not meant for that night. The silence of the castle shattered with a thunderous knock at the gates. The faceless servants rushed to the walls, their lanterns swaying. Alara followed them, her pulse quickening. The gates creaked open, and there he was, Prince Dorian. He looked just as she remembered. Golden hair, perfect smile, posture polished like marble. He wore a cloak of white fur and a sword that gleamed as though it had never seen battle. To anyone else, he would seem like a hero from legend. But to Alara, after her dream, his smile felt like a blade. "My dearest Alara," Dorian's voice carried into the courtyard, warm as honey, false as glass. "I've come to rescue you from this grotesque prison." The beast appeared then, stepping into the fading light. His form towered, shadows stretching long across the stone. "You are not welcome here, Dorian." His growl rolled like distant thunder. Dorian's eyes narrowed, though his lips still smiled. "So it's true, the monster can speak. How charming." Alara stood between them before either could move closer. Her voice trembled, but she forced it steady. "Dorian, why are you here?" He took her hand, too quickly, too tightly. "To take you home, of course, away from this beast. Haven't you suffered long enough?" Her skin crawled under his touch, yet she held her ground. His mask cracked. For just a second, the charm slipped, and the cruelty she'd glimpsed in her dream flashed in his eyes. He tightened his grip until her fingers ached. "You're confused," he whispered harshly. "The monster has poisoned your thoughts, but I will save you. I will." The beast roared, his amber eyes blazing. In an instant, he was there, tearing Dorian's hand from hers. Their power clashed, steel against claw, pride against fury. Sparks lit the courtyard as the fight began, echoing against the castle walls. But Alara was not afraid. For the first time, she saw clearly. Dorian was no savior. He was the true monster, a man who could never love anyone but himself. And in the shadow of his fury, she made her choice. She would not be rescued. She would fight for the beast, for herself, for the truth. As the moon climbed high above them, the courtyard filled with the sound of battle. The prince's shadow had fallen over the castle, and soon, Alara would learn what kind of flame love could truly ignite. The courtyard burned with the clash of steel and fury. Sparks leapt from Dorian's blade as it struck against the beast's claws. The night air shook with roars, shouts, and the ringing echo of battle. Alara's heart pounded, not with fear but with resolve. She knew now the truth. The curse was never about punishing a monster. It was about revealing who the true monster was. Dorian's voice carried through the chaos, arrogant and sharp. Do you really think she loves you, creature? She only pities you. That's all you've ever been, a pitiful shadow of what I am. The beast staggered under the blow of Dorian's sword, but he did not fall. His amber eyes found Alara's, full of pain, but also of faith. And in that moment, Alara knew what she had to do. She ran forward, not to Dorian, but to the beast. She stood at his side, her voice rising above the noise. You are wrong, Dorian. I do not pity him, I love him. The words rang out like a bell. Dorian froze, his sword mid-swing. The beast's eyes widened, glowing with something more powerful than rage, hope. The air itself seemed to still, as though the world was listening. And then it happened. The curse shattered. A brilliant light burst from the beast's form, so fierce that Dorian stumbled backward, shielding his eyes. The chains of magic broke, one by one, unraveling the spell that had bound him. His claws softened into hands, his fur into skin, his monstrous frame into the form of a man, tall, strong, but human once more. He fell to his knees, trembling, free at last. Alara caught him, tears streaming down her face. You were never a monster, she whispered. You were only waiting for someone to see you. But Dorian, his pride burned hotter than any curse. With a furious cry, he charged at them, blade raised. He never reached them. The enchanted carriage, the one that had always stood silent in the courtyard, suddenly sprang to life. Its wheels turned of their own accord, glowing with ancient magic. Its golden horses reared, neighing like thunder. The carriage barreled forward, smashing Dorian's sword from his hands and sending him sprawling into the dirt. The once prince scrambled to his feet, but the magic of the carriage wrapped around him like chains, dragging him into its hollow, glowing interior. The doors slammed shut. The beast, now a man, spoke, his voice steady, commanding. The curse does not end with me, Dorian. It binds you now. Until you learn the meaning of love without pride, you will wander, alone. The carriage's wheels blazed, lifting from the ground. With a crack of thunder, it vanished into the night sky, carrying the fallen prince into exile. Silence returned to the courtyard. Only Alara and the beast remained, the moonlight washing over them. He turned to her, his eyes filled with wonder. You gave me back my life, but more than that, you gave me your heart. She smiled through her tears. And you gave me mine. Hand in hand, they stood beneath the stars, no longer prisoner and monster, no longer victim and curse, but equals, two souls who had fought the shadows and found the dawn. And so, the castle that was once filled with silence and sorrow rang with life again, its halls filled with laughter, music, and light. The enchanted carriage, though gone, left behind its secret, a reminder that love, when true, is the greatest magic of all. And so, dear listener, the beast was never a beast at all, and the curse was never as strong as love's quiet courage. Alara's choice reminds us that sometimes the bravest thing we can do is to see the truth where others see only shadows. If this tale touched your heart, don't let it end here. Share it with someone who needs a reminder that love can break even the darkest spells. And if you wish to walk with us through more stories of wonder and courage, whisper your support with a like, a share, and by subscribing to Whispering Tales. Until the next story, may your heart always find the magic hidden in the dark.